Now that season 3 of What If has come and gone, I wanted to take the time to talk about the show as a whole, because Marvel's What If started out with a certain level of expectations, and so I just wanted to address what we got versus what we wanted. I think that the very concept of a What If show kind of lends itself to having high expectations, just because of the infinite possibility that you can have in a show like that, especially with Marvel Comics, which there's so many characters, there's so many stories, there's so many time periods that are relevant in Marvel. And so the possibilities really are endless with a show like this. But I think that this show does not deliver on a lot of the expectations that people had. Were those expectations fair? I mean, people were expecting a lot out of this What If show, but I don't necessarily think they were wrong to do so, because there were so many opportunities to have great stories we wouldn't get in live action in the MCU, and we kind of just let a lot of the possibility, a lot of the opportunity just pass us by. And I guess before I get started on some specifics, now's as good a time as any to say that I just didn't really love this show. There were times where I liked it. Season 1, I liked it. Season 3, I even liked most of that. Season 2, not so much. I don't have any desire to rewatch Season 2. But I think that overall the stories weren't bad. They just didn't really live up to the hype that surrounded this show, just due to the possibilities that we had. I guess we should start with the story of What If, which isn't going to take too long, because the story of What If is not very complex or anything, and it's not very prevalent throughout most of the show. And I think that's part of the problem. A show like What If didn't need an overarching story at all. We could have just had one-offs for all these episodes and have them all be different what if type episodes, that don't have any correlation to one another or to some grander story. But instead, we did insert some overarching story that started in season 1 and was the most prevalent in season 1. And then we kind of shoehorned it in again in season 2 and in season 3. And I just don't think it works. I really enjoyed the overarching story of the show in season 1, because all of the one-off episodes weren't actually one-offs. They all led into this grouped story with all these characters that we had met in these previous episodes. And so I think that was done really well. But then we kind of let that go in season 2, and then tried to bring it back for like the last episode or 2 of the season. And then again in season 3, we kind of let it go, and it just wasn't as prevalent in season 3, and then we brought it back for the finale and the penultimate episode. And I just think that we should have done all or nothing. We should have not had an overarching story at all, or we could have made an overarching story that actually, related to all of the episodes. So I think that there was just some, half measure there. It's like we want to do half this and half this, and we don't really know how to meld them together very well. And I've said this before in my review of season 3, but I think we should have left the overarching story behind after season 1. I think that in season 1 we did it well, and that should have been the end of it. And season 2 and 3 should have just been one-off stories. That's just my take. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but that's what I'm thinking would have been best. Other than what I just said, I think that there are other reasons why the overarching story isn't beloved by people, and it's kind of an annoyance for a lot of people. I don't think that Captain Carter is the character that should have led this show. I don't think there should have been any main character to this show if it wasn't going to be the Watcher. And I'm sure a lot of people agree with that. Personally, I enjoyed Captain Carter in the first season of this show, but come season 2, she's just in more episodes without really any reason for her to be there. And then in season 3, we bring her back again. I think people at this point, season 2 onward, we're just wanting new, fresh stories, and not just stories about Captain Carter, which apparently the showrunners wanted to just use her as much as possible. And I don't think that this show really did that character justice. I think they just tried to give us so much of that character that people were just kind of put off by it, and I can see why. I don't know exactly why the showrunners decided that we were like Captain Carter's #1 fans or something when they made this show, but I'm sure if you were taking a poll, people would say it's Agent Carter that they like, not Captain Carter. And I know they're the same, but they're also not. And so I think that that's something that was kind of, I don't know, overlooked, unless they were just trying to introduce her so that they can introduce her in a live action. But clearly that didn't work because people didn't really care in Multiverse of Madness. And going forward, I don't think people are really gonna care. If anything, they're just gonna kind of roll their eyes a little bit. But moving past the story of this show, let's briefly talk about the animation. I know that the director of this show was pushing for it to be 2D animated before the first season was made, and I wish that they would have gone with 2D animation. They didn't do it just because it would be more time consuming, but 2D animation is a lost art. And what we got is something that I'm not a super big fan of. I never loved the animation of this show. I think that at times it looks good, but I've never been a fan of, just the general look of it. And I think the thing that puts me off the most is I don't like the way people's faces look in this show, specifically when they're trying to speak, because the mouth movements look very wonky to me, and I just don't like the mouths. There's really not that much else to talk about with this show. This show is kind of just one of those ones that is gonna be forgotten in the future years. Like, obviously people will remember it exists when it gets mentioned or brought up or named, but no one's gonna be thinking about this show. It's not gonna be anyone's favorite show, 5 years from now. No one's gonna be thinking about it. And while I did enjoy some things that this show did, especially in season 1, but also to a degree in season 3 with some of their one-off episodes, I think that ultimately this show is kind of a letdown. There was so much potential, like I said at the beginning of this video, infinite potential with this show, because there's an infinite amount of stories you can tell, and it just feels like we dropped the ball for like half the show. If I had to rank the seasons of this show, it's very easy to do. Season 1 is the best, Season 3 is the second best, Season 2 is the worst. And I know a lot of people didn't like Season 3, but I mean, compared to Season 2, at least in my opinion, Season 3 is much better. I don't know if there's something specific that people didn't like about Season 3, but Happy Hogan Saves Christmas puts Season 2 at the bottom by default. Yeah, so if I didn't make it obvious up until this point, this was not my favorite show. At times I enjoyed it, at times I really didn't. But hopefully there are people out there who really enjoyed this show and had a good time with it. I'm happy for you if you did. I guess the big thing that I'm kind of curious about now that this show has ended is I'm wondering if any characters or concepts that are in this show are gonna be brought into live action in some form or fashion in the MCU. Because you can say that Captain Carter was in this show before she was in Multiverse of Madness. I mean, but other than that, we don't really have anything from this show transferring into live action or being sort of mirrored in live action at all. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say about What If. I didn't really have much to say going into this video. A lot of what I've been feeling, I think I expressed in my Season 2 and Season 3 reviews, but I just wanted to sort of put everything together, everything that pertains to the show as a whole. But what did you think of What If? Is there anything I said that you kind of agree with? Anything that I said that you disagree with? Let me know in the comments down below. If you want to help me out here on YouTube, liking this video, commenting on this video, subscribing to the channel, and checking out some of my other videos all help me grow the YouTube channel. Until next time, bye.